let's crack on with tonight's first debate. Now, the brilliant Leo Kearse is our guest tonight, so of course we are going to throw him straight into the lion's den and make him go first. Not sure why he picked this topic, but Leo is going to tell us why bullying is good. Let's start the clock.
I stand with Dominic Raab, and I can't believe that grown adults in the civil service complained that he was bullying them. Oh my God, are you a little baby? Get a grip. It took us millions of years of evolution to grow a spine. Don't lose it immediately. Oh, it's ridiculous. And bully is just a sort of hate speech slur that's used by lazy weaklings to describe people who are better than them. The allegations against Dominic just don't stand up. Apparently, when he was handed some work, he said, "This isn't good enough." That's bullying? No, that's not bullying. That's some work that isn't good enough, and you need to buck up your ideas, you oxygen thief. Another allegation was that he threw cherry tomatoes at some of the civil servants. Listen, have you ever met a public sector worker? The only way you can get them to move is by throwing your lunch at their heads. It's ridiculous. And the civil service need some motivation. They need some bullying to light the fire under their feet. They're going down to a 2-day week. Honestly, the civil service has been captured by a woke blob.
That's it, Leo. That's all we've got time for on that one. Well, strong stuff. Although, actually, I heard that he did not throw any fruit. That was a slur against Dominic Raab, against the man itself, but it does have good comedic value.
Now we get into the debate as to whether a tomato is a fruit or a vegetable. I don't care as long as it's thrown at somebody's head.
Where does this grievance towards civil servants come from?
I used to work in the civil service. So I was left-wing until I worked in the public sector. And I just seen the profligacy and waste and laziness of my colleagues and myself. I mean, I took advantage as well. Was disgusting. And what you see now in the civil service is it's been captured by a woke blob, which Benjamin probably enjoys. But they're not doing the bidding of elected representatives. People didn't elect the civil service. They elected Dominic Raab to tell the civil service what to do. And I think it's anti-democratic to not follow his wishes.
Do you think there's a sense that because of all of the shenanigans that went on under Boris Johnson's government with ministers not being sacked for misconduct and breaking the ministerial code, that we've seen both Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak actually be quite heavy-handed with ministers? We saw Liz Truss sack Conor Burns. We've seen Rishi Sunak let go of Dominic Raab. Do you think perhaps they're being heavy-handed because Boris Johnson was too light touch?
Yeah, and this is a sort of tale as old as time. You know, people in the civil service, they don't want people that they don't agree with ideologically, and they don't want people who make them do work, because nobody joins the public sector to do any work. So they use weapons such as, you know, bullying allegations to get people dethroned from their positions. And I mean, I think Rishi was a bit hasty to get rid of Dominic Raab. I think the electorate liked the idea of somebody going in and you know, shaking things up a bit. So yeah, I think it was too soon.
But Leo, do you reckon that they would have a problem if it was a Labour minister telling them to do things? Because actually they might quite like the policies that the Labour government are telling them to put in place. Is this an ideological problem?
Absolutely, yeah. So the woke blob, I mean, it's no secret that the civil service, the public sector, are overwhelmingly left-wing. So they don't want to do the bidding of Dominic Raab and the government, who were elected by the people. They don't want to do what the people want them to do. And we've seen this in the chats that were coming up in the Home Office. People posting, civil servants posting that they disagreed so strongly with the Rwanda plan, and they were going to leave the civil service, you know, as soon as they picked up their pension. So yeah, I mean, they don't want to do what the government tells them to do, and that's part of the problem.
I mean, I think that's obviously completely ridiculous. And the truth is that civil servants are the ones who had to do the actual hard yards of working out how you undid 50 years of being in the EU. That's been an incredibly laborious process, and it's faceless people that we don't know, whose names we don't see in the news, that actually had to do that. When Dominic Raab, for example, when he was Foreign Secretary, was apparently too lazy to go and sort out people's lives being at risk in Afghanistan. He claimed the sea was closed. So this idea, you know, often bullies are the lazy people. denial, right? They're trying to overcompensate for their own inadequacies. And I think Raab might be in that camp.
Well, it's great that you bring up Brexit as an example of something that the civil service has really put the brakes on and tried to get in the way and make a mess of, because they don't want it to succeed. They don't want something that they're ideologically opposed to, such as Brexit, to be a success.
Do you know what? Having spoken to people within the civil service, actually the sort of political ideology isn't the biggest problem. It's the fact, as you said in your little speech there, there's a culture of doing the bare minimum among some of them, whereas, of course, there are brilliant people within the civil service. Many of our top graduates go into the civil service and they're hard-working. But there are some who do take the mick, and we've seen how many are stuck working from home for far longer than people in other businesses and other areas of life. So I think that's got something to do with it, a bit of incompetence, perhaps.
Yeah, and so much presenteeism as well. I mean, when I worked in the public sector, all you had to do was turn up, you know, with a suit and a tie on and sit there. And you could be doing whatever, as long as you looked like you might possibly be working. But now you don't even have to do that.
Does this say more about you, Leo, than it does about, you know, your former colleagues?
It was the culture. It had nothing to do with me. I've just absorbed it by osmosis. The fact that I still do it at GB News is completely...
But I want to know, do we need more bullying? Why do we need more bullying?
We need to bring back bullying. Look at the state of young people now. We need to bring back national service. We need bullying. All these people say, oh, words are violence. No, they're not violence. Violence is violence, and you should be getting some.
But Leo, if your daughter was being bullied at nursery, would you say that we need more bullying?
No, of course not. But my daughter's going to be taught MMA as soon as she can walk, so she's going to be the bully.
I mean, I think there is a real thing here that people actually, even though if you give an example like Albie just did, then they would say, oh, I wouldn't want my kid to be bullied, or if they've maybe been on the receiving end, they might be aware of how it can have a real effect on a person. But actually, when they look at politicians, whether it's this Dominic Raab case or go back to Gordon Brown, who was accused of bullying quite famously when he was Prime Minister, accused of throwing a phone, let alone a cherry tomato.
And phones were big in those days.
They were, I mean, it was only 2009, but... And so I wonder whether people actually quite like the attraction of bullying from other people, because they see it as a code word for tough, when actually, when they're on the receiving end of it, they tend to take the complete opposite view because they know it's probably not helping people to work hard or feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for adults to complain about bullying, I think you've got to evolve to be. You've got to learn to be a bit more assertive and stand up to people. I mean, in school, also I think you know, bullying inoculates children for the adult world. So you know, they toughen up when they receive a bit of bullying.
I mean, I was bullied heavily, and clearly I'm incredibly tough, so that explains it.
Well, there you go.
Hasn't impacted you at all, Benjamin. But you know what, though? Looking at some of the allegations that were made, apparently one bloke complained about Dominic Raab after he'd messed up the Brexit negotiations with Gibraltar. Well, that's just incompetence, right?
Yeah.
That's not bullying.